Welcome to another episode of Step by Step Talks. I'm your host, Rohini Kapoor, and today we're interviewing a guest who has not only written a book by the name of We Do Recover, but has represented her recovery from her childhood and upbringing that few of us could recover from. She's going to share that with us, and it's an amazing story. As you know, Step by Step Talks really promotes women being financially independent. And when we talk about being financially independent, it doesn't mean just earning money. It means overcoming challenges. It means having someone in your life who inspired you to get where you are today. So, Germana Rovinelli, I welcome you today as our guest. I am so happy that you agreed to be podcasted by us. And I'd like to start with you introducing yourself and then talking about your journey, insights you have to offer our listeners as well. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I want to say I'm so grateful to be able to be with you today and to potentially inspire and support people in learning how powerful we really are when we take certain steps, regardless of what's happened in our lives. I just need to clarify that the name of the book that has been rewritten is called Journey of Transformation,
Right.
Healing Generational Trauma. So I didn't want to interrupt. My journey started, basically I was raised by two people that came from the World War II, and they both had complicated post-traumatic stress disorder. And in those days, you never got help for any kind of emotional issue. You just shut up and kept moving. And I believe both of my parents were mentally ill as a byproduct of their upbringing and being silenced and just pretending it never happened. And so what that did for my upbringing is they passed on their unfinished baggage and wounds to both me and my brother. And that resulted in me being programmed to believe that I was basically a third class person and a worthless piece of garbage and that I would never amount to anything. And I really had no idea how much wounding and trauma I had absorbed until I got into my mid 20s, where I had then faced all of these other problems that were related to running away from the pain of being abused and silenced so effectively and muted. And as I started to learn about why does my body feel this way? What is happening inside of me? It was like a piece of a puzzle came, and then another piece, and then another piece, and another piece, and another piece. And then I'd get an image of, oh my God, I have been viciously tortured by my parents, and I believe that it was my fault. So what eventually helped me find a way out of the trauma response and the identity as a victim was understanding how the subconscious mind works. And I, went into a 12-step program to stop hurting myself, which was very helpful. And then part of the amends process was, who are you? What are your needs? What do you believe about yourself? And I needed to learn how to give myself what my parents could not give me and what my coping mechanisms robbed me of, which was an education, dignity, a voice, confidence, ability to love and to be loved, ability to feel safe. All those things were missing. I did not know how. I called myself a feral cat, like a wild, wounded animal that just did not know how to function. And I kind of learned like a blind mouse, finding out from moment to moment to moment. And I was lucky to have some people that taught me how to break the patterns that I'd installed or learned to normalize, because that was how I survived. And I was very interested in things like being physically fit helped me because it allowed me to feel safe. That was something no one could rob me of. And I became a fitness professional when I was 18, and I started doing that. And it was the one area where I was celebrated. People liked me. They didn't care if I was overweight. I was paid well. In those days, you were actually paid well. And that eventually moved into different areas. Personal training eventually became one of the resources that I used to teach people how to take care of their body. And I was lucky enough that I was raised in a way that my biological father was blind. So he was handicapped. But what I saw from him was that he was happy. My mother was not happy. My mother was always miserable, drinking, screaming, blaming, shaming. And my father was blind and he was also viciously cruel. But what I saw about my father was that he would go jogging while he was blind. So he did not let that keep him down. And I noticed that he was happy and my mother was not happy. So that's what inspired me to go, well, even though he's blind, legally blind, and has pensions for it, he's happy and he's jogging. And that gave me some hope. I thought, well, if I stay moving, I might be okay.
I'd like to take a few minutes to thank Intergen Wealth for being our sponsor. Thank you very much to Thomas Gamer and Zach, who have sponsored step-by-step talks in the past and continue to do so even now. They promote women being financially independent and children being financially literate. Thank you very much for being our sponsors.
And I was one of his fighters, and which is bizarre. And it was a driving need to belong. I wanted to belong somewhere, so I would belong to martial arts schools, and I would beat people up for, appreciation and approval. And one day I looked at him and I said, "You look like Bruce Lee." And his both of his senior students grabbed me, dragged me out of the school, down the hallway into the office, and you can't say that. And I said, "Well, why?" "He does. He's even got the golden stripe down his leg. He's skinny and everything." And he goes, "Well, he's related to Bruce Lee, but it's unethical and it's against their code of ethics to use that kind of posturing to boost your morale or your business." Anyway, I was part of the school for probably about 2 years. And one day, Han took us all to a ravine show. And a ravine show is sage hypnosis. So he pays for all of us. We're all going as a community. And I'm in the bleachers watching. And the ravine guy takes everyone, I think it was to the year 1990 or 2000 or whatever. And he's bringing everyone forward. And two of my teammates, they're the top students of the school, are in hypnosis and they're doing the show. They're
Yeah,
in the show. And he's brought
yeah.
them forward. They're both doing these great forms for Han. He takes them, they go through their thing, and then he goes up to them. He says, "Well, why are you here?" And, "Oh, I'm teaching for Han." And the other guy goes, "I'm teaching for Han." And there was a woman that was, she was a bookkeeper and she was embezzling money out of the business. Like, he took them all through the process. And I was just shocked because this was what her unconscious agenda was. Clearly, she didn't know it, but we all saw what she was actually really about. And while the show was on, this space opened up the side of my psyche, and I saw myself teaching a fitness warm up. And that was my subconscious telling me, leave this industry now. And I came home and I never went back to the school. I stayed for a while longer and I left. But it told me, you need to go in this direction. And I just honored it.
I
And
see.
I was fascinated by the subconscious mind because it was like forbidden knowledge.
Hmm. Well, so honestly, I think the fact that you kept yourself moving and kept yourself active helped you a lot to move on to the next path in your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let's start with the challenges or triumphs you had on your path to success. You have had, when we do read your book, it is a hard read actually, and um, to overcome what you overcame does take a strong person. It's not everybody could go through what you did, and you did have a lot of setbacks. A lot of times you fell back, but you stood back up again. Something kept you going. So what
Mm-hmm.
was that one thing that kept you going? Yes, you said your dad was a runner. He was blind and he was moving, but something must have snapped at some point. A lot of my audience, women who come on who listen to the show or who are a guest on my show, always say there was a breaking point that led them to, okay, now it's a time for a change. And it's like we always say, it's not a failure, it's an experience.
There was one particular thing that happened when I got into my first stage of recovery when I was still incredibly young, and it rattled me. I was in a group where we were learning about boundaries, and boundaries is about like where you end and I begin, and I get to speak up and I get to have a voice and you respect me. And I'd never been taught how to do that. And I was in this group. And, first there was the physical boundary, and I realized when I was supposed to speak up, I didn't know how. my body went, "Ugh," and I couldn't speak. I was silenced, because one of the ways my parents silenced me when I cried was to drown me in sink. So I didn't speak. You shut up. So that was a coping mechanism. And so part of that group that day, we're all in this deep, deep meditation, which is a form of hypnosis. It's altered state work. And we're supposed to bring a gift to our inner child. I'd never heard of the inner child, had no idea what it meant. And I thought I was going to bring my little girl a basket of strawberries, because I remembered as a child, I loved strawberries. And so we go into this deep state. The room is full of people, and I'm going through this process, and I'm bringing her strawberries, and she's this beautiful little girl in a white dress and Buster Brown shoes and brown hair and blue eyes, and so we're to give the child these berries, or the gift, and then we're supposed to ask the child, what does this child want back from us? And this is what really made me have an about face in my life. As I gave her the berries, and she was just beautiful. She looked like a little porcelain doll, and she was just lovely. And she reached across, and I could feel her depress her finger into my thigh. And she looked at me, and she just said to me, just love me. And this is something I'd never had. I'd never been just loved. And I realized that I had been abusing my child, myself, just like my parents. I had married a man who almost beat me to death. I had self-destructed on so many levels, and I just started to shake and sob. And I cried, and I cried because I realized I didn't know how to love me. I didn't know how to stand up for me. I didn't know how to protect me. I didn't know how to know that I had any worth. I was still like, will you please love me? I didn't know how to say I love you to me. And I cried, and I left. I had to leave the room because I was uncontrollably sobbing. I cried all the way home. I cried for about 2 weeks. I did plan on murdering my therapist at that time. I did plan it out because I didn't know how the pain was beyond anything I could comprehend. And I made a decision that I was going to give that little girl that lives in me what my parents did not give me: dignity, love. I was going to learn how to love her. So I didn't know what that meant, but I was willing to learn. And I was going to give her what my addictive behavior, which is just a form of coping with pain, robbed me of. And so every decision that I made is this loving this little girl, like even picking my career. I wanted to teach people how to love themselves. And so that was the big pivoting moment. And then if and when I fell off my horse, which I sure did a number of times, I would kind of go, I would be exhausted, I would be tired, I would be scared, I would be defeated. And I also was taught to have a spiritual practice of prayer and meditation, and some type of self-hypnotic work where I'm actually connecting with my emotional, my physical body. And that was where I learned to get the energy and the juice to say, I got this today, or I got you today, or I'm okay today. I needed to learn how to parent myself. And I did that through altered state work. I did that through spirituality. I did that through just a practice. And my one teacher, he said, every day when you get up in the morning, before you start your day, you light a candle to remember the light that you came from, that you are part of that light. So you don't forget your power, and then you have whatever practice you have. And he gave me exercises that were specifically for deprogramming the programming that I'd been carrying about, not being of any value or any worth, through imagery work, removing the obstacle, integrating the authentic self, and then going through your day with that new landscape. This is how I can see myself in the world. And that taught me that I'm not what happened to me. And it gave me tools so I didn't always need a therapist, because I couldn't afford one. I could not afford to see a therapist every week. So I learned how to become my own therapist through some of
Therapist,
me.
which is so important. If you want to move forward from, post-traumatic stress, really, you have to have some sort of ability to change and create habits and strategies, and also have a different mindset so that you can be
Mhm.
successful. Now, that's obviously what you did, and then you became successful. Do you want to share that story and how you now are very successful? You have your own business, you've written a couple of books, you're moving on. This would be a very inspiring story for our guests, because they, many women are stuck. They don't know what to do. But you
Yeah.
moved on. Meditation helped you. Martial arts helped you. Your working out helped you. But obviously, there's also strategies and habits that you could share with the audience.
I think the most important thing that this is going to sound strange because it's a layering. There's a layer and then you get some ease and then more stuff comes up, ease, more stuff comes up, ease. I made a decision that come hell or high water, I was never giving up on myself. And I made a decision come hell or high water that I'm not junk and that whatever you call it, the universe, higher power, blah, 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 that I'm part of that. So that's a level of power that it's called, it's like how do I say this? It's kind of like we're part of the universal desk. We forget how strong we are and how lovable we are. And we have hidden powers. And through my practice, would track into that and use that to allow me to have the confidence to say, I can do this and not be hooked up on how it goes, like not be attached to the outcome, but just go, did you do your best? So some of the successes that I've had, I'm not very good at blowing my own horn. I'm a little bit shy about that. And like I've done a lot of bodybuilding shows when I was a lot younger, and I got a lot of trophies and I won a lot of trophies, and I came in second in Canada as a female natural bodybuilder when I was 52, which is actually unheard of. And I got out of like a relationship with a very, very, very rich covert narcissist who was attempting to help me to become so crazy that I would have been happy to murder myself. He stalked me and did all of that. He did all sorts of things that I had a pattern of attracting very cruel men in my life and learning to say, I will not accept this. I'm not accepting this from you, and having good boundaries. So like I have a business, I've been working in my business. It's called Able Body Consulting, which was a metaphor by one of my teachers who was a ninth dan black belt from Okinawa, Japan. He's expired now, but when I was 21, I went to one of his black belt gradings, and he said, health is harmonizing the body, the mind, and the spirit. When one is out of balance, we are out of balance. So my business model was body training, mind training, and spirit training. I did a lot of body. I'd got mastery of that, some mind stuff mastery. But what really gave me the true power to move through the fearing mind, which is just one of 7 monkeys that just doesn't shut up, was to do spiritual work. I got into psychic reading, intuitive reading. I'm very clairvoyant, and I don't pitch that. I don't sell that. I don't do that professionally. But I got really good at just trusting my intuition and my gut. So I would be with someone and I go, why do I have this feeling? And I was reading their body and I didn't know it, kind of like a Terminator. And it was because I didn't have all this lateral confusion. I wasn't scanning for danger because I actually learned how to feel safe. And learning how to feel safe is what allowed me to make the choices and not sabotage myself. So in my business, I help people through, those different mediums, and I pay very expensive motorcycle. It's paid for, and I ride that. And that was one of my amends to myself. I wanted to have some fun. I wanted to play, and I wanted to stop fearing getting hurt.
Yeah. Now, when you were going through all this, there were times that you probably thought, oh God, I can't do this. And you fell back. You probably fell back. You did a couple of times, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I ended up with a really bad car accident. I don't know how many years back now. I think it's 2008. And I had a spinal cord injury and front and back head concussion, and it blew my thyroid out. And I was basically told that I was depressed. And they sent me to different specialists. And they had misdiagnosed some of the problems that I had. And it took everything in me not to take my life. I remember laying in bed with the sound of a blowtorch in my head for quite a while. And, obviously I had shooting pain in my face, my eye, my groin. It felt like someone had put a C-clamp on my most private little parts and was just crushing it. And then my foot, my knee, my hip, my groin, and my face and my eyes, hands and feet were burning. I had neuropathy. So they were trying to send me off to these different people to say, like, she's just crazy. And I'm like, well, no, let me put your body through all this pain and see how long you last, because I still had to keep working. And many times I sat there and bargained with myself, do I take my life and end this? Because this is embarrassing and it's terrible. And I was making a lot of very expensive mistakes because I had a concussion. I didn't know it. No one would tell me you have a concussion. So the one thing that kept me from taking my life was that I have a son, and I thought I can't do that to him because we have no real family. And so I fought against the insurance company. They had a private investigator following me around, trying to take pictures of me to say that she's still working, she can still do this. And I remember phoning my lawyer's assistant one day when I'm in my car driving to a client's house so I can pay for my mortgage payment so I don't lose my house. It's all that I had. And there's this guy behind me taking pictures. And I phoned my lawyer's assistant and I said, I'm going to probably swear, I said, get this blank and piece of blank off my back, or I'm going to rip him out of his car and I'm going to punch his head right off his neck. I said, if they can't afford to help me get better, but they're going to stalk me, then I said, I'm going to hurt this guy. So you need to phone the adjuster right now and tell him to get the private investigator off my back. And the guy goes, don't do anything. Don't hurt him. Don't just, and I said, get rid of him now because I need help and you're not helping me. I got mad. And so all of a sudden, no more private investigators. And I spent a lot of money. It took me about 7 years. I spent 57,000 of my own dollars helping heal my concussion. And I do live with and spinal cord injury. So the one thing that helped me with the brain injury was neurofeedback, and I had to go to a woman that I take a ferry, took a whole day to get there and back. And I use that like on Tuesdays. I would always do that on for quite a while. But what it did is the parts of my brain that had to shut off from the trauma started to speak to each other again. And all of a sudden I could read and write. I could spell properly again. I could hold a conversation. I could do all of the things that were basically gone, that I was terrified if anyone saw how effed up I was, that they would never hire me, that they would never stay here. And I knew that I'm a survival instinct person, that I needed to protect my cognitive skill set so I could at least survive. And there was lots of really terrible things that happened. And I think the one thing that anchored me was believing that something on the other side was protecting me and taking care of me. And that might sound just a little bit strange, but I had nowhere else to go. My mother's mentally ill. She's blaming me for being alive. My father's the same. He'd phone me and scream at me about things I did when I was 5. And I'm like, I'm not, you don't have children to hurt them and blame them for being alive. So I had nowhere else to go. So I went to the candle and I went to the prayer and I went to the meditation, and I kind of begged for help. And I also had temper tantrums at my higher power thing. I'm like, I've done everything I can. Now you need to show up. And if you're not showing up, I'm done. And then all of a sudden, solution, solution, solution. It was strange. Like I would actually, I have a spiritual temper tantrum. You need to help me. You got to take care of me. And it worked.
Amazing. Now, if somebody wanted to get access to your story and your book, where would they find your book, Germana?
They could find the book on Amazon. And if you plug in, my name, Germana, and the last name, Rovinelli, the updated version of the book that uses the attachment theory information to heal the attachment issues that come from our subconscious and our upbringing are part of that story. And that book is Journey of Transformation, Healing Generational Trauma. And that was also to take the dartboard off my parents. I believe no matter who we are, we're doing the best that we have with the tools that we have. And we're inheriting 7 generations worth of programming. So that's where.
Now, in your book, you've also done some short courses. I think people can look through and jot down some points. What is all that about?
I'm still in the developing stage of doing some online courses. I really wanted to do some regular where you could come up and purchase and it would be available. And I have yet to get that piece completed. What I am doing is I'm doing meditation courses and self-love courses that are on Zoom and obviously in person through my home as a way of teaching people, because what I've come to learn is no matter what has happened to us, if we can learn to ask our body, does this bring you joy? Is this good for you? What do you need? then a lot of the defense mechanisms go away. And I think then we can find that sensitive, sweet, powerful part of ourselves. So the online stuff hasn't quite come together yet. It's kind of like a jet that's being built while it's in the air.
Uh-huh. Okay, but you do talk about the attachment styles, the dismissive avoidant, the fearful avoidant. You've put some steps down. And if somebody wanted to talk to you more about that, how can they get in touch with you?
They can reach out to me via an email, g@germana.ca. They can reach out to me via my website. It's called hypno with a number 4 and then health.ca. And they can also reach to me through my other website, ablebodyconsulting.com. And all, those all have a way of sending me a message, and they could also do it through whether it's Facebook. And I do online, Zoom meetings with people all over the world. If they have a block that's getting in the way from them to actually just finish this one portion of their exam or to become, a super athlete, I've had people come to me and go, help me with this part. And I can usually figure out what belief system's in the way and help them reprogram it. And then I'm obsolete. I'm no longer necessary, because our subconscious is responsible for our behaviors and our outcomes. And I go, stop talking. Your actions tell me everything. And I look at the actions and I look at how there's a default setting. And I'm like, when I understand that, then I can help them let it go.
Go. Yeah, definitely. Um, Now that you've gone, from despair to hope,
Mhm.
right? And from addiction to recovery, where are you now, Germana? Where do you think you are now in your life? And this is, a very good point for our audience to see, who've been through stress, who've been through traumatic experiences. You looked at hope when you were in despair. You looked at recovery when you were an addict. What is next?
Teaching other people, teaching and being a person to help other people light their candle. I see myself very much as a teacher, and I have been a teacher my whole life, but it's now I kind of feel like I'm in a place of resonance and mastery, because I don't have these messages that I'm not okay. I don't have a fear of whether someone likes me or not. I'm really in a place of just neutrality and feeling supported by, this sounds so odd, supported by my practice. So I feel loved and charged enough that I just look at the world as a playground, and it's like a bit of a circus show. There's a gong show, and there's the scary people over there, and I look at all people, they're just afraid. There's a young soul, a middle soul, and an old soul. And people that are old souls forget how to take care of themselves, and they
Yeah.
burn themselves out by not giving themselves what they're giving everyone else. So I see myself now as really a universal teacher and a master. Like when I got my and that's not an arrogant thing to say. When I did my astrology chart, I had it done twice, and both of the people just kind of went, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." And they just went, and the master healer, you're a master healer. You are an old soul. You went through all of this to do this, and that's why you teach hypnosis, and that's why you do this. And I was just like, please tell me so I can believe that it's okay to step into those shoes. So for the most part, I'm having a great time. I'm pretty happy. I don't have a lot of distraction. I don't buy into chaos. I realize where I could be a little bit more considerate for myself. And I see myself, like, if it happens, I would love to see my book become well received. I would love to see myself write some other books or programming that helps people break through the myriad of confusion and mental acrobats that people get into, and go and forget about listening to this, but drop down here, because this is where your power is. And most people live here, and they're not in their power. They're in a program of fear. And
Yeah.
so if anything, I mean, it. And fear is crippling. The mind will make up stories that are not true.
Definitely.
The person will go into those patterns and believe they're true, and they might waste 10, 15 years or minutes buying into something that is fabricated from one of these random thoughts, because the mind will always try to protect us from the emotions that we have not processed. So if you go, okay, so their mind's coming up with this, what's the emotion under here? Well, oh, it's fear. Okay. And have a tool to release the fear. Then there's energy for your soul to go. And the minute, in my experience, that you access that, you are invincible because you're not afraid of death. You're not afraid of judgment. You're not afraid of poverty. None of it. Because this is Earth School.
Yeah, exactly. So your book really is created, like you say, to help others find solutions, and that's you. You're going to help people find solutions if if they've gone through a traumatic period or a traumatic life. Improve their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at the same time, live their best lives regardless of what has happened or not happened in their lives. I think that's what you say in your book, right?
100%.
And I think that's something that I would recommend that everybody takes time to do read this book, whether you are going through a traumatic time or not, because it's good. It's very, it's very good to hear about what other people are recovering from, to more trauma or emotional pain. To understand other people, and then you can also understand how people react and why they're reacting in a certain manner.
Well, and I watched my son go through addiction and almost die. And I helped him get sorted out and into recovery. And he became a multi-millionaire through his own, intelligence, just trusting it. And then he lost it and then he rebuilt it. But understanding that most people are just trying to get away from what they think is unacceptable. And all that they really are is stories and messages and feelings. And what happens when you get a child and the child is sobbing and you soothe that child and the child can feel safe. And then the child goes, oh, well, you can do that with adults because it's all a cry for love and a cry for help. And there are people that are flat out evil. I mean, they're just
Oh,
like planted evil people. You stay away from those people. But I think the biggest amends that we can give ourselves, no matter what has happened or what has not happened, I used to ask, why didn't I get, some cool parents? And I realized that I wouldn't have done this journey if I would have got parents that treated me like I had any worth. And I
no,
could have
that's
chose
true.
not to. I mean,
Exactly.
I could have stayed in the ditch doing the backstroke, swimming
And
in shit.
just swimming, yeah. There is no hiding from grief, like you say. And if you are suffering from grief, I would recommend that you get in touch with Germana and
Oh,
read her book because it is a fantastic book. And I really want to thank you for being our guest today, Germana. Would you like to give one tip to the audience on how to be financially independent? Because that's what Step by Step
I love
really
this.
endorses.
This is beautiful. Wow. For me, what I would suggest is pay yourself first. If you have a mortgage, pay double payments to get out of your mortgage. If you're in a relationship, make sure you put a percentage of your money away for yourself. And tell yourself that I'm a money magnet and believe it. Because money is like oxygen, you need it. And without it, you're in deep trouble. And I think, particularly for women, they can set themselves up thinking the guy's going to take care of them. Well, I would suggest that women set themselves up to not need that guy ever. And if you share your wealth with someone, that's wonderful. But be money, become money literate and get out of debt. Get out
Get
of
out of
debt.
that. I
Do
think
not
those are
buy
just
more cars. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those were just wonderful points, and it was just amazing talking to you today, Germana. Thank you very much for letting us podcast you. If you
Thank
have
you.
liked what you've heard, please hit share, subscribe, and like. And in a few months we will podcast you again and see where you are
Thank
with
you.
your courses, so that we can promote them for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Germana. Have a
Have a
super day.
wonderful day. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye bye. Bye.
Bye bye.